Well, howdy there, stranger. I'm Jordy.
And I'm Brad.
And welcome back to Beers with Queers, the true crime podcast where I research a case, and Brad here, and potentially you guys.
Don't know a damn thing about it. Except this week, I do. And since we're filming this episode a week early because we're going to Nashville Pride this weekend, it means it's still Pride Month and I can slip in one more Pride-themed episode right here at the end. Even though you'll actually hear it in July, I can get away with it.
So you found a loophole. So, all right, one more Pride episode to close out the Pride Month of 2025. I'm interested to see what he has in store for us. We talked about it last week, and currently we've still not went to Nashville Pride, which is kind of like the big shebang to end all our Pride festivities. It's kind of what we've been building up to. It's supposed to be huge. I'm really excited. And, last year was our first time going, and it was really fun. The parade was awesome. The festival was awesome. Yeah, it was just a good vibe.
And this year, we're actually going to be in the parade. We're going to have people walking with us in the parade. We have been spending the last few nights building posters, and we're painting our little brick swag giveaways that we're doing, hand painting rainbow flags on them and trans flags and bi flags. We got a little bit of all the bricks for you. But going to Pride this weekend, it's going to be an all-weekend event, and so we knew we better go ahead and film next week's episode this week. And so I'm using that loophole to say, hey, it's still Pride Month, so I'm going to give you one more Pride-themed episode.
There you go. And I think that's a perfect way to close it out, which I say it in last week's episode too. It's kind of Pride 24/7 on this podcast. But, Pride Month is just where, the LGBT are at their fullest power, so to speak. It's just a really good, awesome month with all eyes on the community. And we just make sure that it's full of love and acceptance. And yeah, I'm interested to see how Brad chose to end Pride Month. And I'm very interested to see if he cries in this one.
This one is actually more of a history episode, and it's probably going to make you more mad than anything.
Well, perfect. And I don't say that. I say it because everyone loves when Brad cries because it does show emotion. But I mentioned it last week. I was like, this episode, we've dealt with a lot of murder and sad cases like that. So when I thought we were ending it last week, I was also like, let's end it with a history episode. So it's not sad. Brad doesn't have to cry. In the first 5 minutes of last episode, Brad started tearing up. So
Well, we were talking about them taking away the suicide prevention hotline here in America, and it is very, very unfair. Like I said last week, queer youth are already 2 times more likely to commit suicide, and if their family rejects them, they're 8 times more likely to commit suicide. So just think about that and think about them taking away that hotline. It just means they don't value human life. Because queer life is still human life. Whether you like us or not, we're humans, we're here, and we deserve the same rights and privileges as everybody else.
And that's true. And it is very serious, and it's especially in the middle of Pride Month to do something like that. It feels
That was deliberate.
very deliberate and personal. So I completely get it. So I'm not knocking Brad. Like I said, we love the passion behind it. We love the compassion behind it. So I'm interested to see what this week's about, to see if it's tear-worthy.
Ire-worthy, I would say. And speaking of doing something in Pride Month just to piss everybody off, let's go ahead and jump into this. They marched right through the center of Hart Plaza, 10 to 15 black-clad men, swastikas on their chests, rifles at their sides, shields held firm, marching right through the heart of Detroit pride. They tore a rainbow flag apart, ripping fabric to the pavement. They spat homophobic and racial slurs, made monkey noises at the black attendees and the police. As the Pride attendees began to react back, the Detroit City Police appeared and formed a protective perimeter. But not around the festival goers. They formed up around the Nazis. A lone voice cracked through the crowd. Why are they being protected and not us? And this question would soon echo across the city and then the nation, and no one knew it then, or maybe they did, that this would change the face of Detroit pride forever. Have you heard this?
No, I've never heard this before, so he's stumped me again. I'm interested to hear what it's about, especially you were right when you said it's probably going to be infuriating, especially with Nazis invading Pride. So, all right, yeah, I'm ready to buckle up for it.
June 2019. Each June, for just a few days, Hart Plaza in downtown Detroit became something more than a public space. It became a sanctuary. Motor City Pride, now in its 47th year, drew between 55 and 65,000 people. Under the open sky, the city's skyline kept silent watch as the crowd gathered for a weekend of solidarity and celebration. But the true heart of this gathering pulsed with history. In June 1972, a group of activists had marched down Woodward Avenue, not holding signs that read "Celebration," but banners demanding recognition against homophobic laws. That act was a defiant spark. That march later evolved into Pride Fest, then blossomed into Motor City Pride. The venue itself spoke volumes. Back then in Ferndale, the event was intimate, almost hidden. But in 2011, organizers made a bold move. They carried that spark downtown to Hart Plaza. This wasn't just a new location. It was a purposeful transformation. Detroit's LGBTQ+ community was reclaiming the city's central canvas. So this is right downtown. This is the heart of Detroit. By 2019, the scale was overwhelming. 3 stages hosted drag performers, local bands, and speakers. Over 140 vendors had set up booths along the riverfront, offering everything from face painting and dinosaur bone digs to queer art and nonprofit outreach. Nearly 150 acts performed across the weekend, providing a riot of color and sound that matched the rainbow flags and upbeat energy. Parents guided children toward face painting stations, while queer youth gravitated toward volunteers handing out mental health resources. Elders, activists, and allies mingled, creating a tapestry of experience and hope. Among them was Douglas Haller, a veteran of Detroit Pride. He had witnessed the earliest gatherings and now watched as the plaza overflowed with belonging, a reunion of chosen family, he called it. Behind the scenes, the city had taken cues from that growth. Officials, organizers, and Detroit police studied maps and trailers near Jefferson and Woodward. Barricades marked paths, shuttle buses and bike lanes funneled the crowds. Uniformed officers monitored entrances, their presence steady, professional, and measured. The venue, Hart Plaza itself, carried a silent weight. Named after Senator Philip Hart, it stood where Detroit had begun in 1701, a site of city founding and rebirth. Monuments like the Dodge Fountain and the Underground Railroad Memorial looked on, reminding visitors that struggle and liberation had always been present here. The senses stretched across the plaza. Music floated from the stages. Children's laughter mingled with applause. Conversations drifted alongside river breezes. Drag queens sashayed. Community leaders spoke of Stonewall. In that space, collective memory and future hopes intertwined. There was something rare about that weekend. Not just celebration, but quiet reflection. Moments of laughter fell side by side with moments of tears. For every photo and selfie, there was a shared memory or a solemn vow. Pride wasn't just pageant. It was protest turned presence. Protest turned permanence. And yet, beneath the glow, beneath the banners snapping in the sunshine, something waited. Not in the middle of the plaza, but at the edges, beyond the barricades. Security hummed with confidence, but that very confidence would be its undoing, because visibility draws notice, and notice sometimes draws tension. In that vast celebration, so bright, so open, there was an unseen pressure. The crowd didn't know it yet, but this fortress of light would soon face a test unlike any before. They heard them first, the sounds of boots on pavement, the sound of a practiced march. Then, about 15 men associated with the National Socialist Movement entered Hart Plaza, right at the heart of Motor City pride. They carried rifles, handguns, and shields, each bearing swastika insignias. Their entrance cut the air with an unspoken challenge. These men weren't visitors, they were invaders. They moved into the plaza with purpose. As they marched, they grabbed a rainbow pride flag and shredded it in plain sight, cloth pulsing to the pavement. That action alone sparked a ripple of realization across the crowd. This wasn't a protest. This was a provocation. Then another marcher was caught on camera, leaning over an Israeli flag laid on the ground. He appeared to be urinating on it. That image circulated immediately. It wasn't about random disrespect. It was symbolic aggression aimed to desecrate both queer identity and Jewish heritage. Then came the slurs. The NSM members began hurling both racist and homophobic slurs, still wet with intent. Some members even mimicked monkey noises at black attendees, and even the police. The plaza pulsed with tension, every echo sharper than the song or laughter that was there before. One attendee later described the moment as an unbearably cold shift, recalling how phones came up in alarm and parents pulled their children aside. They said the plaza stopped feeling like a sanctuary and felt suddenly unsafe. Attendees surged forward as one, arms lifting, chests bracing, hands gripped at the marchers' shields and rifles, bodies pressed into steel and fabric. The plaza's heartbeat quickened. Voices rang out not in song but in resistance. Jessica Brzezinski stepped into that surge, drive clear on her face. She stood blocking the line of marchers. In return, she was shoved violently to the ground. The impact rang through the crowd. For many, it was the moment's celebration unraveled into violence. In one video, after shoving Jessica, a marcher leaned in and spat, "I'll put you out." The threat lingered in the air, clean but chilling. Then the police arrived. About 15 Detroit officers converged. Forming a rigid line around the NSM members. Blue uniforms blocked the route. Marchers were redirected toward the plaza's edges. On a few uniforms, faint rainbow pins appeared, a gesture of solidarity, muted in the brushed-up tension. Phones flashed. Attendees captured frames of police and Nazis moving in tandem. Jessica's bruised arm caught in video became a symbol. The police had shoved festival goers, clearing the path for armed neo-Nazis. Outrage spread on social media. "Why are they protecting Nazis?" became a rallying cry. Many felt the police weren't protecting festival goers, even in a moment of clear danger.
I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine the tension that must have felt, especially this was 2019. So this was only like 3 years after, something like Pulse. And so even to this day, when you have large gatherings like this, there is always a somewhat lingering sense of dread. Like, people have done it before. It's very possible that someone with an agenda could attempt to do something as dangerous, if not worse, now. And so it is something that's always, it's like a sad reality, especially for so many queer people, is like every pride event you go to or popular gathering or whatever it may be, most people I know is there's like a sense of everyone's always slightly on edge, like looking around, making sure there's no shady people walking around, no weird bags and stuff, just because there are people like this that can't stand to see other people minding their own business, being happy without trying to not just ruin it, but literally end their lives because of it. And, especially when you see police, the queer community and police don't have the best track record, but in recent years, especially as of like 2019, most have tried to rectify that in some way. But to see the cops come there and be like, okay, well, thank God. Now they're going to get them out of here. We can go back to having fun and chilling, and then watch them protect the Nazis and push you out of the way to let them continue to march and taunt you. I can't imagine the mixed feelings of fear, anger, disgust, frustration. It's just all over something, an event people were having a good time over. It's just so senseless, and it is rage inducing.
Yeah, and don't forget, these guys showed up armed. Like, they have weapons. They have handguns. They have rifles.
And that too, I can't stand those types of people where it's just an intimidation move. And that's literally all it was. It was just them trying to feel like a Billy Badass because they have a gun on them. And it's just so pathetic, honestly. That's the word I'm looking for. It's really pathetic.
And then after what the cops done, that sense of betrayal deepened the echo of what happened next. As the NSM departed under an officer's escort, armed and uncharged, no arrests were made, no weapons were confiscated, and to the crowd, it felt like hate had been allowed to march unhindered. Many ask, why had the police let an armed extremist group march through the middle of Pride? And although a woman had been shoved, a spitting threat had been made, none of it led to legal consequences. The NSM walked away, allowed to return to the margins, but not held accountable in any visible way. And after the NSM left, a hush settled over the crowd. The usual laughter and chatter slowly resumed, but with a lower volume. Attendees moved more cautiously. Phones hovered and raised hands, ready to record again at any moment. Conversations were quieter, tempered by a new wariness. And that's fair. You just watched a group of neo-Nazis walk right through the center of your pride, which Pride is a celebration of love, acceptance, and to have that walk through the center of it, people that's literally yelling slurs and tearing up pride flags right in front of you, you should be upset. I think you should be upset.
Definitely, and of course it ruins the whole mood because now it's the fear of, well, what if they didn't leave and they're just waiting somewhere to catch someone from the festival walking home alone, which is again a very real threat for every pride, and it's really sad. I know so many people that they go to pride and then as they're about to leave, you see them maybe take off the rainbow bracelets or the earrings and stuff if they know they're having to make the walk back to their car or to the bus station or something alone, because now once you leave that ground of safe space, you never know who's just waiting for that exact reason. They're literally just waiting because they want to harm you for attending a festival.
Many of the people in attendance and viewers of the videos online questioned the role of the police that day. They didn't see officers protecting a celebration of love and equality. They saw officers protecting hate. And a festival built on visibility felt hollow when visibility welcomed the armed and the hateful. Yet the event pressed on. Drag performances continued. Vendors rang bracelets. Speakers took to the stage. But their words paused for a moment. They carried a heavier weight. Survival and fear had overtaken the celebration. In that unresolved moment, a metaphor emerged. The police had contained the danger, but not judged it. They had prevented violence, but not provoked accountability. That distinction reverberated through text threads, social media posts, loud reunions, silent walks. The question glowed: if hatred can march without penalty, what hope remains for protection? Motor City Pride ended its day intact, but within the halls of Hart Plaza, a new boundary had been drawn between what is endured and what is enforced. And over that boundary, attendees couldn't ignore one resounding question. If the shield accommodates both protector and persecutor, whose safety do they really serve? Police Chief James Craig stepped into a firestorm of criticism, but held firm that the NSM had broken no laws. The NSM had a right to protest, and Detroit has a legal carry law for firearms.
They have a right to protest, but there's a difference between protesting and hurling racial and homophobic slurs at people. That's not protesting, that's harassment, so I think that's such a cop-out answer coming from a member of law enforcement, the police chief of all people. There's a very fine line between protest and harassment, and I think once you start using slurs, derogatory slurs, it kind of crosses the boundary.
I think once somebody gets shoved to the ground and then threatened, that also crosses some boundaries.
And that also crosses a boundary too. So yeah, it's such a horseshit excuse, honestly.
And I don't really have it in the script or anything like that, but these guys came to provoke. They had their own film crews there filming the whole thing. They come in, they wanted to start a fight. They wanted to provoke people at Pride into a fight.
And that's so funny too. You don't see gay people going to an NSM rally to try to provoke a fight. It's always the other way around. And it's people like this that'll intentionally go somewhere like this to provoke a fight, but then try to play the victim.
Well, I don't think they have anything better to do with their lives. If you're so full of hate all the time, your life's got to be pretty shitty. Just in my opinion. So all you can do is go around and hate people and go and try to ruin everybody else's happiness. That's just my opinion. On top of not backing down and saying they had the right to be there, something came out. He admitted that a week before Pride, Detroit police had received specific intelligence that the National Socialist Movement planned to appear armed with rifles, others with handguns, and to stage a Charlottesville 2.0 demonstration. That warning, however, never reached organizers, city officials, or the public. Police leadership deliberately chose secrecy, fearing that an early alert might spark disorder. So the police knew it was going to happen. They set up everything for it to happen, but they didn't warn anybody that it was gonna happen. Craig also defended that decision under heavy scrutiny, of course. He also said officers had acted as a buffer, not an escort, positioning themselves to separate the hate group from the crowd, not facilitate their presence. He insisted this tactic aimed to prevent violence, not endorse the NSM. Craig explained the police response unfolded step by step. After intelligence emerged, cameras were stationed at key plaza entrances, legal observers were dispatched, liaison officers were briefed on protocols, and by the time the marchers appeared, the department's plan was fully activated. Craig drew a direct lesson from Charlottesville, and Charlottesville is where a white supremacist rally had turned deadly when Heather Heyer was killed by a car attack and dozens more were injured. Detroit's police believed failing to contain the NSM could repeat that tragedy, not just symbolically, but catastrophically. Still, council members criticized the secrecy, and they should. They demanded to know why Pride organizers had been kept in the dark and why festival goers were unprepared for armed provocateurs walking among them. Craig's message that restraint prevented disaster rang hollow for many in that moment. Craig went on to claim that both the NSM members and some counter-protesters had hurled racial slurs at officers, and that police had remained even-handed through it all. But his words encountered immediate pushback. At the lectern, Black counter-protester Miko Williams spoke with quiet intensity. She refuted Craig's account bluntly. None of her group had insulted officers. Instead, they had warned them, Black lives are at risk too. Her statement went beyond denial. It echoed a deep-rooted distrust held by many Detroiters in a city scarred by past history and recent claims of excessive force. While Williams' voice echoed in the council chambers, video footage began spreading across social media and news outlets. It captured attendees pushed violently to the ground, their arms red and bruised. One clip showed officers moving them aside, clearing space as armed neo-Nazis advanced. The cold efficiency was striking. Jessica Brzezinski later published photos of her battered arm, a large, angry welt after being shoved by a marcher while police just stood by. She said it plainly. Police had allowed Nazis an armed parade to Pride's Gate and erased her safety. The reaction was swift and emotional. After the council meetings, local organizers recognized a gap. The official narrative focused solely on law enforcement, but attendees held their own stories of fear, force, and near misses. Detroit Will Breathe, a grassroots group born in response to past police violence, stepped forward to create space for those voices. As the days passed, they also announced a community tribunal at Hart Plaza. Using folding chairs and a single microphone, they transformed the square into a public courtroom of conscience. It was a direct response to the lack of accountability they saw from officers who stood aside as neo-Nazis marched, and to organizers being kept in the dark about looming threats. On the day of the tribunal, hundreds gathered. They came to testify, to witness, and to be witnessed. Festival goers spoke one by one about what had happened to them or what they had witnessed that day. Then the discussion turned to the scout car incident. Yes, besides Nazis walking through the middle of Pride, a police SUV also rolled into the crowd, injuring at least 3 people, and then continued forward before stopping. Witnesses spoke of shattered glass and legs caught beneath the wheels. One recalled the car accelerating once its rear window was smashed. And despite these accounts, police officials defended the action, saying that the driver accelerated only to protect occupants per safety protocol.
I didn't know safety protocol allowed you to mow down people on the street
At a festival.
at a festival.
Don't forget, they're in a festival, so there's just people everywhere, and you just mow them down and keep driving over them.
But not the Nazis. You don't mow down the Nazis. You just mow down the other innocent people just there trying to enjoy a festival and then still try to act like they're the problem. It's very much giving the Detroit police are acting like a 16-year-old girl that's like, it's not my fault. It's everyone's problem but mine. I'm not the issue. Everyone else is the issue.
And that explanation, delivered through official channels, did little to counter what people in the plaza were saying, that fear, confusion, and harm had been the real reason it happened. Local journalists took notice. Video clips from the tribunal spread online. Social media lit up with reactions, and the tribunal became a flashpoint proof that Detroiters would no longer defer to police claims without scrutiny. It wasn't protest or parade. This was a public reckoning. Detroit Will Breathe's tribunal launched broader action. They organized rallies at police precincts, and local TV covered every tribunal panel. The rallies echoed citywide calls for Craig's resignation. Signs and chants filled the air. Buffer, not protector. Justice, not cover-ups. The tribunal also forced city officials to respond. City council members watched the clips. Editorials questioned the disconnect between the internal intelligence and the public experience. The tribunal had done more than expose events. It had reframed them. And it did so in the very place where celebration and conflict had collided. Detroit Will Breathe's voice also echoed through legal hallways. In late 2020, they brought a federal lawsuit against the city, alleging the Detroit Police Department had used excessive force during protests. The case concluded with a settlement exceeding $1 million and a court injunction that significantly restricted the DPD's use of batons, shields, rubber bullets, tear gas, and similar tactics in future demonstrations. In the wake of 2019, Motor City Pride organizers reassessed safety measures for Pride events. Starting in 2020, they introduced structured protocols, early outreach to police, clear communication channels, and defined roles. Police presence was limited to LGBTQ+ liaison officers in plain uniforms who marched with the parade, not armored patrol units. Private security firms took charge of the entry points to reduce the visible presence of law enforcement, and organizers also demanded advance notification of extremist group threats, no longer solely relying on the police to just bridge that gap. By June 2022, this model was in place at Motor City Pride. Liaison officers walked alongside private security on the route's edge. Some Pride goers welcomed the change, seeing it as a balanced approach, offering safety while acknowledging past harms. Yet others remained wary, unsure whether any police presence could ever be fully protective. One Detroit Will Breathe organizer, Tristan Taylor, reflected after the event, "Police showed up differently, but the memory of 2019 still moves through us. No protocol can change or erase that." That uneasy compromise carried through every planning, meeting, permit application, and marshaling session in the years that followed. Pressure for transparency, dialogue, and mutual accountability became ingrained in Detroit Pride's DNA. Choosing transparency meant foregoing secrecy. Opting for liaison instead of a barrier meant walking a careful line. But 2019's Pride had made Detroit's queer community ask the hard questions. Is safety without trust really safety at all? And can genuine protection even exist without that trust? Questions that don't have easy answers, but questions that have inevitably shaped not only how threats are confronted now, but how pride is defined and protected. Since then, the community and the police have made strides together, and each forward step together is measured, not just in strides, but in trust regained. That is the story of the 2019 armed pride protest in Detroit.
It's one very infuriating case because especially when you see police actively protecting Nazis, little Nazis marching through the street. Honestly, that part is not the part that shocks me. It's the part where a cop car, and I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous, a cop car mowed down protesters, and they're kind of just trying
Not protesters.
or not
These were
protesters,
just
I'm sorry.
people at
The people at Pride they should have mowed down the protesters, the Nazis, but instead they mowed down just the people. So on top of all of this, they're feeling unsafe around the Nazis. The cops are protecting the Nazis, and the cops are also running over the people at Pride. It seems so ridiculous to happen, and the fact that afterwards there's no apology. It's literally the chief of police being like, "We didn't do anything wrong. That sounds like a you problem." But I'm glad like there was some the queer voices were heard and there were changes made to the Pride. And that's also a really interesting point. Like it's a hot topic point of debate for years, decades of police presence at Pride. I know for many, many years here at local Knox Pride, it's been a huge topic of debate because a few years ago it was like there's going to be a heavy police presence with police cars. That was a pushback because obviously people aren't going to feel comfortable or safe being authentically themselves when you have a bunch of armed officers roaming the festival. And I 100% get that. As we've said before, the relationship between police and queer people is not a good one. It's still not a real good one. I mean, yeah, you'll see police posts like on their Facebook page, like "Happy Pride, we protect everyone," but that words and actions are two very different things. And
There's too much of a history to just let it go.
And there's too much of a history. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take many, many years to rectify all the harm police have caused the queer community over the last century before now.
And that's not counting just all the stuff that they still do. I mean, we cover a lot of cases that are recent, and the police, I mean, they'll hand people back to cannibals. They will make excuses like it's a gay lover's affair and just do stuff that they would never do to just a straight individual.
They won't. And also, my immediate first thought was when he was talking about police handing over cannibals, I was like, yeah, the victim they handed over to Jeffrey Dahmer. But then I forgot,
No,
this happened just 2022, they handed someone back to another cannibal, the
yeah,
grinder cannibal. So it's not something that's gone away. It still very much happens.
one handing back to cannibals is way too many. Two handing back to cannibals. Yeah, there's a reason why queer people do not trust the police.
Again, it's one of those things, though, it's like kind of a catch-22. I understand also the point of where the city's coming from, like legally, we want it because there's going to be people, if there's not police, there's going to be people coming there like the Nazis or anyone else to heckle, to harass, provoke a fight. So just for liability's sake, there has to be some police presence, which I get. At the same time, I also get some officers stationed around there is a deterrent from people trying anything too risky. So it's one of those things, like it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I get kind of both sides of the argument. Like I understand why the city itself would want some sort of police presence, but at the same time, 100% valid. Queer people don't want a lot of cops at Pride. So it's one of those things where there's no clear cut right answer yet. Hopefully in the future we can get to that point. And yeah, it's just one of those really, we could talk for hours about it. And so I think that's why this is a really interesting case, because it really highlights all sides of it. Like, this is what can go wrong when you have a police presence at Pride, even though in their mind they were trying to do the right thing. It's
They
weird.
shouldn't have done it secretly.
And oh yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. The big thing for that is the secret part. Like they said, they didn't tell everyone knew except the Pride organizers
No, city council didn't know.
or city
No
council.
one knew except the police. They took it on themselves and said, "Hey, we know it. We're going to take care of everything." So nobody knew except the police.
And here's the thing with that, like, instead of allowing people to put in protocol, like, so everyone's already aware, like, yeah, we're gonna have some hecklers, we'll deal with it, the police are on it, you just let them show up beforehand, and God only knows could happen. Anything could have happened in a split second. No one knows the cops are coming right away. These guys have guns and are yelling slurs. Someone could have got shot, someone could have got hurt, and what are they supposed to do? The cops would be like, well, we were going to handle it. We just didn't tell you they were coming. And
That's actually how they handled this.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's so reckless because of the fact that so much could have gone wrong so quickly because, like we covered in our Pulse episode, 33 people died in the span of less than 10 minutes. So it's one of those things, like you are putting too many lives at risk by keeping people intentionally in the dark because you think you have it handled when it's
And also, I don't know the legalities of everything, of course, in Detroit and everything.
in Detroit, that's fair.
Well, I was going to say, but you would think there would be some kind of, yeah, they have like an open carry law, but there are places that you can say, yeah, but you can't carry in here. And you would think like a venue such as this, like where a festival is being held, would be one of those places where they would say, hey, probably not a really good place to have the open carry going through. Like, I know here in Tennessee, man, we can carry a gun anywhere we want. But the thing is, if a place says you can't bring it in, then you can't bring it in.
Yeah, we have open carries, but if we go to like a convention or something like that, or any place like that where like an event is going on, they can be like, yeah, you're not allowed guns in here or in this area. It's just
I think guns, especially when it's neo-Nazis again, let's not like just pretend that they're not neo-Nazis. When neo-Nazis are carrying rifles and handguns into the crowd of people they absolutely hate, you would think that would be a huge red flag.
Yes, because they're going there with the intention of something bad happening.
And even if it's just to intimidate, that is a bad thing, right? There was no shots fired, nothing like that. But the thing is, they still terrified a bunch of people. And
Women, children, like not just queer people, but queer people of all ages, allies who were there, straight families who were there, like so many people, like, and it's just so funny to think they felt so manly terrorizing children. It's so weird. And it is one of those things where it's so frustrating and you can't convince them otherwise. And it's so ass backwards. But yeah, well, now I'm heated and we could go on
I
forever.
told you, this one won't make you cry.
And we could go on for hours talking about this, and I'm going to start feeling like a talk show. But with that, thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode. If you enjoyed this episode and the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating or review on iTunes or Spotify. Helps us out a lot. Helps other people discover the podcast. And of course, we just love hearing from you guys. If you want to see photos from today's case, you can follow us on Instagram at Beers with Queers Pod, that's POD, or on Facebook at Beers with Queers, a true crime podcast. And until Monday, I hope you guys had an amazing Pride. It was a fun one here. Hopefully it was a fun one for you guys. Stay safe and stay dangerous out there, my friend.
And even though when you officially hear this episode, Pride will be over, you can always carry pride in your heart all year long.
Amen.